I almost said Attorney General. Senator Blumenthal.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Welcome back to
By
the show.
any title, great to be with you.
What is this thing you're going to be announcing later today regarding foreclosures?
We're announcing a major investigation through the Senate Judiciary Committee of many of the practices and really abuses on the part of the mortgage servicing companies. What they do is try to maximize their own fees by charging people, in effect, to stay in their homes through the foreclosure proceeding without altering their mortgage. And what they really need is to modify the mortgages so people have to pay less on them, have a lower principal, not just lower payments, but stay in their homes because, you know, until we diminish the number of foreclosures, until we make the housing market work again, we will not recover economically in this country. The housing markets are one of the major reasons that we are still in a very fragile and flagging economic recovery.
So you're asking them to do something, or you're investigating?
We're
to see if they're
investigating
doing...
some of the abuses, for example, the fees that are charged by the mortgage servicing companies. We have gone to bat for people. We advocate for them. We try to keep them in their homes because many of them are underwater, as the saying goes. Their principal is lower than what they owe. The value of their homes is less than what they owe to the banks. And yet the mortgage servicing companies are taking fees from them and engaging in other abuses so that they are in even worse position economically than they would be if they moved. But really what we need is to keep them in their homes, as we've been able to do in my office. You know, we've taken cases, more than 140 of them, people who were going to be evicted, people who have been overcharged by the mortgage servicing companies. I want to know from the banks, that's who our targets are in this investigation, why they are using companies that are exploiting people in this way, because it's bad for everyone. They ought to modify the mortgages so people can stay in their homes, and many of these abuses of people's rights and economic situations are working to the detriment of the entire economy because we can't recover economically until people feel secure in their homes to sell them or stay there, find jobs. That's really what we have to do.
Are you announcing this today at 11 o'clock?
We are.
At 11?
Oh.
At 11.
There's
You know,
nothing
you're in
else
competition
to do
at 11.
o'clock.
Well,
the president's making an announcement at 11, and Tiger Woods is making an announcement at 11.
Well, but, you know, really we've preempted everyone by doing it on this show.
That's true. He's making it right now.
You know, the president's not on this show, so
That's
But
right.
Tiger Woods is on the hotline, though, so let's take that call.
We do
you
have
know,
a call.
PLR is really where it's at.
This is where you want to break a story.
Exactly. This is where I've broken some of the most important stories as Attorney General and
It's true.
as United States Senator.
Chris in Hampton, what's your question for Senator Blumenthal?
I just wanted to tell him thank you for coming down to the CWA Hall the other day and supporting me and my coworkers at T-Mobile and trying to organize our unit here in Connecticut.
It was great to be with you, Chris. You know, just to amplify what Chris has just said, I was down in Hamden on Saturday to meet with some of the technicians who work for T-Mobile. These are the guys who are responsible for those towers that transmit the signals that are the way we communicate with each other. And T-Mobile, in some of its practices, I heard from them, has discouraged them from forming a union, even though the cards that have been submitted by Chris and his fellow workers indicate that the majority, overwhelming majority, want to organize a union there. So the election's July 19th. Be interesting to see what the outcome is, because I think the members of that workforce really want a union, and I met with them to hear them. Obviously, I'm not reaching any conclusions about what the election's going to show, but it takes a lot of courage for guys like Chris to stand up and speak out.
Thanks for calling, Chris. If you have
Thank
any
you,
questions
Chris.
for the senator, call in. Before we hit the phones heavily here, I want to talk to you about debt ceiling. That's your focus there now in D.C.
Focus of D.C., but, you know, the real focus has to be on jobs. It has to be about jobs, and economic recovery. And that's really the context for the debt ceiling discussion. We need to raise the debt ceiling, but we also need to diminish the debt and the deficit.
We do need to cut the debt, right? I mean, it's
We
great. We're going to
absolutely-
be Greece in a few years. Didn't
Absolutely.
we just get a report from an independent group that basically said we're going to be worse than Greece?
And everybody
that's all?
has to contribute, so to speak. There have to be.
I
a
feel
lot
like
of
I'm
options on the
contributing a
table.
lot now.
Amen.
We can't afford anymore. Let's be very blunt. We can't afford anymore subsidies to the ethanol industry. We can't afford subsidies to agribusiness for not growing things. We can't afford in Medicare to give the pharmaceutical drug companies a sweetheart deal without negotiating lower prices as
So that
the
sounds
VA
good.
does.
So you want to cut some of this stuff.
Some of the tax
So
expenditures,
you want to
the
raise,
waste.
but do you also want to raise taxes?
Well,
Do you think that should be part of the deal?
and that's where we come to jobs. The answer is no.
Yeah.
I don't think we should raise taxes.
So you're going off the party on this one.
Well,
Good for you.
taxes, in my view,
And, I like how they're calling it revenues now because tax is such a negative word. They say we need to get revenue. It's like, well, I know what that means. That means taxes.
You do. You have a brain in your head.
and we need to, we do need to raise revenue, but not by raising taxes. And,
Right.
these terms are all so
So how else do you do it?
fungible.
Yeah. Well,
And
you cut some of these things he's talking
Cut some
the
of the
senator's
waste
talking about.
and
Yeah.
and fraud, some of the giveaways, sweetheart deals, loopholes in the tax code, and we also need to cut spending. That's
Cut
absolutely
spending is
essential.
number one. I think everybody wants that. Yeah. Let's go to the phones for Senator Blumenthal. Pat in Bristol.
Hey, Mr. Blumenthal, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I have a question for you. If we're in such a deficit, how can we pay off a debt when all of the money that the United States government had is loaned to them at interest from the Federal Reserve System? How can we pay off a debt that is never ending, or at least bring it down when all we keep doing is printing money?
Well, there are several parts to your question, but let me answer as succinctly and clearly, excellent question, as I possibly can. We actually, at the end of the Clinton administration, had a surplus.
Yeah. What happened to that?
And exactly.
Well, 2 wars.
At 2 wars,
Yeah.
which we didn't pay for, and tax cuts, which obviously diminished the revenue coming in. We have the lowest level of taxes that we have, I think, in 60 years as a percentage of gross domestic
Doesn't
product.
feel like it, though.
And it doesn't feel like it because everybody's struggling. People are hurting. They're
You had a lot.
struggling to stay in their homes and keep their families together and to find jobs. The economy is still really in a very fragile state. So people are continue to hurt. But to answer the question, if we can work gradually to eliminate the deficit, to bring down spending, to eliminate the loopholes and the giveaways, and I've just mentioned a few of them. There are also the
Yeah, there's a long
subsidies
list.
to
Yeah.
oil and gas. These are our dollars
Yeah.
that are given away.
We
to
just cut
special
like
interests.
$800 million in help to, I think, Pakistan, right?
And we ought to hold on to that money. If Pakistan isn't going to cooperate with us and collaborate in fighting al-Qaeda and the terrorists in their own country,
Right. Well,
within their own
We'll
borders,
just keep that money then.
the fertilizer factories, I don't think I'm saying anything that is a matter of national security confidential, but I've been given briefings as a member of the Armed Services Committee about the fertilizer plants and the sources of ammonium nitrate, calcium ammonium nitrate, that is used for the IEDs that our troops, our weapons are aimed at the terrorists, but the plants are in Pakistan. So the Pakistanis have to be compelled to cooperate with us, and withholding aid is one way to do it. So in addition to being fiscally more responsible
Yeah.
and cutting spending, that $800 million, and by the way, the amount in total is in the billions that we provide to Pakistan year after year, we can also perhaps engage them more on our side and create incentives for them to cooperate more.